Hello and welcome to Crowned Heads, the Da Vinci Code Breakdown Part 3. Today we're going to look at our third and most recent release, which is J.D. Howard Reserve. J.D. Howard Reserve is actually a cigar project that started with a unique wrapper and a look in mind as opposed to a concept. We had always wanted to do something with a darker wrapper leaf. Ideally it would have been Connecticut broadleaf, but we went to Ernie, and for the last 2 years there hasn't been enough yield on broadleaf that he had access to, so it kept getting pushed off the table. So we're down to the factory last year and we're looking at some options, and Ernie says, hey, we got this Brazil Arapiraca wrapper you should take a look at. And we did, and it was that darker leaf that kind of stood out and apart from Four Kicks and Headley Grange. So we started playing with the blends and started playing with different combinations of tobaccos. So we knew this was going to be our third release. I was tasked with the idea of what is going to be the brand image, what's going to be the name of the cigar, which brings me to the creation of J.D. Howard Reserve. So the idea kind of came to me one night in the middle of the night, oddly enough, at 3:37 in the morning, and I had this idea to tie the cigar back to Nashville, which is where our hometown is and where we're based. And I texted Mike Conder the idea at 3:37 in the morning. He says, don't you ever sleep? I said, sometimes things come to me at odd hours. So one of the little Da Vinci Code breakdowns that brings us to this is the 337. That's what we called Project 337, was J.D. Howard Reserve. Fast forward to Christmas of that year, and my wife had gifted me a book about the history of Nashville, which I'm a history fanatic, love history, and I started reading all these different things about Nashville, one of which that I didn't know was that the outlaw Jesse James resided in Nashville from 1875 to 1881. At that time, he went by the alias of J.D. Howard, because obviously if you're a wanted felon, you're not going to want to go by Jesse James in those days. So when he lived here in Nashville, he went by J.D. Howard. Started to research more and more, got with Stephen, started to go over some brand inspiration, some ideas. He went to the library and literally spent about 35 hours culling through all this microfilm, all this microfiche of printing and logos and designs and ornamentation specific to Nashville in that era. We wanted something that was very specific to Nashville. So all the ornamentation that you see on this box right here is very indicative of engravers and printers in the 1860s to 1880s, which is during that time period here in Nashville. The monogram was something that was used very commonly. They were like logos of that time period, and Stephen created this all by hand, and we came up with something that we felt had a real unique vibe to the packaging. There's another number here called 711. 711 is a reference to the address that Jesse James or J.D. Howard resided in Nashville, 711 Fatherland Street in East Nashville, which oddly enough, I used to live in that area. We would go by it all the time, my wife and I, and never really knew that that's where he lived, but it's still there. It's on the historic register. If you ever visit Nashville, check it out. The house is still remaining there. Also, another unique thing is the train, another hand-drawn illustration by Stephen Jones, aka Go-Go, behind the camera. The train is very indicative of the Industrial Revolution time period, right around there, but it's also a subtle nod to Jesse James being a train robber. He was very fond of robbing trains. But one interesting story that I learned when we were doing the research on Jesse James was when he would get on a train with his gang, he would ask all the men to show their hands, and if you had calluses on your hands, you were perceived as a working man. He wasn't going to rob from you. If you had manicured hands or whatever, you were probably a white-collar guy and he would rob from you. So he's kind of a glamorized Robin Hood of the day, I suppose. So that's kind of the story behind the tie back to Nashville. We wanted to throw back to Nashville and create the third brand, being J.D. Howard Reserve. The components are real simple. It's a Brazil Arapiraca wrapper, Sumatra Ecuador binder, and a Nicaraguan filler, which yields a very unique flavor profile that was distinctively different than Four Kicks or Headley Grange. Somebody asked me initially, like, how would I describe it? And I said, well, imagine you are by a campfire and you bite into a jalapeno pepper drizzled in maple syrup. That's the best way I could tell you what it tastes like, because it's got that woodsy note to it, a little bit of sweetness and some spice on it as well. very complex smoke, and it's been critically embraced by bloggers, more specifically, and retailers and consumers. So we're very happy. We made a few of the top 10 lists in the blogosphere, and we thank you for that support. Hopefully somebody's calling with an order right now for it. But that's about it on J.D. Howard Reserve. Check it out at a local brick and mortar tobacconist near you. Thank you for supporting Crowned Heads. Thank you for checking out the Da Vinci Code Part 3. We'll see you next time.